North Korea, a country better known for propaganda posters and scarcity of food, brews a lot of beer. And average North Koreans love those beer sparklers. To celebrate their world-class beer, they had even thrown a flashy beer festival on the Pyongyang waterfront, complete with neon lights, live music, and beer girls in tight uniforms delivering pints. Comrade, it's true. Once upon a time, on the bank of the beautiful Taedong River, locals and foreigners clinked glasses together under the Juche skyline and enjoyed their bubbles. It's not exactly the image we expect from the hermit Kimdom, and yet North Korean state media has proudly hailed their national brew, Taedonggang, as the best beer in Asia, claiming it can hold its own against Germany's centuries-old brewing tradition. Bold claim, isn't it? Well, you can wait and judge it after finishing our episode. Today, we're diving headfirst into the frothy tale of North Korean beer, from its historic arrival on the peninsula, to the oddly charming culture built around it, to the new brands quietly bubbling to the surface. Best of all, I managed to get my hands on several of these elusive brews and taste them myself. So stick around till the end for my personal tier list of North Korea's beers. But before we begin, salute to your loyal members who financialize our humble studio. Thank you. Also, if you found your name missing, please comment below to let us know. No comrades will be left behind. Now, loosen your belt, show us your beer belly, let's gyombe.
It really is the oddest story, and Ushers was closing down in 2000, and at that time North Korea was looking to build its or open its first brewery, and the two events coincided.
Once the North Korean government had purchased Ushers Brewery, they dismantled the property and shipped it piece by piece to Pyongyang for it to be rebuilt. And North Koreans came here to Trowbridge to learn exactly how to make Ushers beer.
Beer and North Korea might seem like an odd couple. One can mistakenly recognize beer as one of the imperial beverages aimed to corrupt the socialist mind, just like Coca-Cola. But in reality, North Korea has an intriguing beer history dating back to the 1950s. In those early decades, beer was considered a low-priority luxury, produced in small quantities with aging equipment left by Japanese colonial breweries. Yet even then, North Koreans had a serious thirst. Hard liquor like soju was traditionally favored, and beer was practically viewed as a refreshing soft drink. It makes drinking beer less of an alcoholic vice, but a hobby and pastime, especially for men after long hours of grueling work. Korean men commonly start drinking alcohol in their teens, and often drink a bit every single day, so the demand was definitely brewing. Into the 80s, as the state economy improved, beer, with its ever-refreshing bubbles, grew popular among the public. The problem? Supply and quality weren't keeping up. Kim Il-sung, our great leader, apparently noticed this beer gap. In the local law, he discussed plans to develop a high-quality domestic beer that could satisfy the masses. But sadly, the Soviet Union failed to keep pace with his plan. The late 80s was a time of socialist social upheavals, which eventually led to the collapse of the communist bloc, which led to the loss of food aid, which led to a devastating famine. All brewing upgrades fell by the wayside. During the arduous march, people were struggling to eat, let alone brew alcohol with those precious grains. The dream of better beer had to wait. As the country began recovering around 2000, Kim Jong-il resurrected the beer project with gusto. The plan? Go big or go home. North Korea scoured Europe for a full modern brewery to buy. In a now legendary move, they set their sights on an old British brewery for sale, the Ushers Brewery in Trowbridge, England. The Ushers Brewery was a legacy British firm with 175 years of history, but it unfortunately went bankrupt in 2000. Through a German intermediary named Uwe Erms, North Korea purchased the entire brewery, lock, stock, and barrel. Literally everything from the brewing kettles down to the bricks, and even the toilets was sold for around £1.5 million. When the British brewery manager realised who the buyer was, he was astonished. But the North Koreans meant it very seriously. A team of DPRK engineers and officials arrived and dismantled the brewery piece by piece, packing more than 2,000 tons of equipment and materials into shipping containers bound for North Korea. They took almost everything. It says they tried to take a shared brick wall until the owner protested. Apparently, someone in Pyongyang thinks the pub's wall is valuable and perhaps would improve the beer's taste. The operation was so intense that the British side had to ask for assurances that the equipment wouldn't be mistreated for making weapons, and North Korea agreed, promising it was strictly for beer. While the hardware slowly voyaged by sea to the port of Wonsan, North Korea prepared a brand new brewery site in Pyongyang. They chose a location in the Sodong district, and by June 2002, a shiny new Taedonggang beer factory rose on a 10-hectare compound. The brewery, named after the Taedong River that flows through Pyongyang, was outfitted entirely with the transplanted British equipment, and North Korea even imported advanced brewing software from Germany to modernize the process. In November 2002, Taedonggang Beer Factory began production, catapulting North Korean beer from a backwater operation to world-level technology virtually overnight. Kim Jong-il was thrilled. From the brewery's construction in 2000 until his death in 2011, he gave dozens of directives to ensure that this beer project would be a success. He personally christened the Taedonggang beer as a national treasure, and celebrated that North Koreans could finally enjoy world-class cold beer all year round. Comrades, this was a big deal, all thanks to the dear leader's unparalleled investment insight and masterful gustatory. The dear leader made a beer revolution in a country often beleaguered by shortages. Thus was born Taedonggang beer, which quickly gained a reputation as North Korea's flagship brew. The state media dubbed it the people's beer, not without reason. Brewmasters spared no expense in ingredients. Barley from North Korea's breadbasket farms in Hwanghae province, aromatic hops from the highlands of Ryanggang, and pure water from the Taedong River's tributaries. By combining British equipment with German techniques and top local ingredients, Taedonggang beer was born to impress. And they did it. Visitors began reporting that Taedonggang was actually pretty good, fuller-bodied and maltier than the light, fizzy, mass-market beers common elsewhere in Asia. One traveller described Taedonggang as a full-bodied lager a little on the sweet side, with a slightly bitter aftertaste, rating it as one of the highest quality beers on the Korean peninsula. The Economist magazine cheekily declared in 2012 that the Taedonggang Brewing remains just about the only useful activity at which North Korea beats the South, a comment that caused quite a stir in the fake Korea down south. Characteristically, North Korean beer tends to have low hop bitterness to suit local tastes, and benefits from the country's unpolluted water sources. So the result is a smooth, easy drinking pint. As the national flagship, one key to Taedonggang's success is variety. Instead of just one beer, the Taedonggang Brewery produces a whole lineup of different brews, all simply named by number. From the start, they rolled out beers number 1 through number 7, each with a distinct recipe and flavor profile. It's an ingeniously simple naming scheme, and very socialist chic, isn't it? Taedonggang No. 1 is a 100% barley malt beer with around 4.5% alcohol by volume. It's described as richly aromatic. It's basically the purist's brew, a classic all-malt lager with a sturdy flavor. If you like a bit of bite and malt depth, No. 1 is your choice. Taedonggang No. 2 is the crowd pleaser. It's about 70% barley malt and 30% rice, but smoother and more refreshing in taste. North Korean sources call No. 2 mild and tasty, with rich foam. And indeed, this became the most popular brew among locals. It's often cited as the favorite, even the brewery staff's top pick. One North Korean beer fanatic claimed the flavor is well balanced, and the aroma lingers in your mouth longer than many foreign brands. In other words, No. 2 hits that golden sweet spot, not too bitter, not too light, with some subtle rice flavor. Taedonggang No. 3 blends more rice in the formula. It's a 50-50 blend. They say this one achieves a nice balance. The clean, crisp finish of rice and the gentle bitterness of malt meet halfway. It's like the middle child of the family, often overlooked, but actually well-rounded. If No. 1 was too bitter for you and No. 2 too smooth, No. 3 might be just right. The number goes up, the ratio of rice goes up. Taedonggang No. 4 consists of 70% rice and 30% barley. This is a lighter, very clean-tasting beer that emphasizes the soft, white rice flavor and lower bitterness. It's designed for those who don't like high alcohol or bitterness. No. 5 is really an oddball. Yes, it is a 100% rice beer. And regretfully, I have never tried it out myself due to its very limited supply outside Pyongyang. This one was specially developed for female drinkers, according to the North Korean press. With virtually no barley, it has a very unusual taste compared to typical beer. People say it's strange or unique, probably very light, maybe slightly sweet or sake-like. It's essentially a rice beer that barely resembles the malty beers most of us know. Now we get into the dark beers. No. 6 is a dark lager at around 6 degrees of alcohol. Like all other Schwarz beers, it's brewed with a coffee aroma. Think of a dark coffee porter style, roasted malt notes, and a hit of coffee on the nose. North Korean brewers wanted to cater to modern craft beer trends. Finally, we have No. 7, another dark brew, but with a chocolate aroma instead of coffee. They gave it a rich malty body and infused a chocolatey note, aiming for a dessert-like smoothness. Among foreign enthusiasts who have tried these, Taedonggang No. 7 often gets a nod for being surprisingly tasty. But personally, I much prefer a pint of Guinness rather than these socialist dark beers.
평양의 자랑 대동강 맥주. 평양의 자랑 대동강 맥주.
That's 7 Taedonggang beers, each simply labelled with a number on the bottle or on the tap. North Koreans enjoyed having this variety, and they certainly elevated the beer scene. The country's beers once were bland and low quality, but now they suddenly had stout and all-malt lagers on par with world standards. No joking, for a country of chronic famines, that's truly a large range of beers. Taedonggang's success turned beer into a bit of a status symbol domestically. Because it's made with high-quality ingredients, it's pricier than the cheap rice liquor or soju locals can get. Regular North Koreans actually need to use ration coupons to buy beer. Pyongyang male citizens receive vouchers for 1 to 2 litres per month at subsidized rates. If you want more beyond your ration, you'll pay hefty prices on the grey market for the coupon. Still, many North Koreans are willing to splurge. The rise of the Donju class in Pyongyang means there's a market for premium beer. Beer houses, also known as pubs, began popping up all over Pyongyang, over 100 of them by some accounts. The Taedonggang Brewery itself set up a chain of Taedonggang beer halls in various neighborhoods so that people could enjoy fresh draft beer conveniently. In Pyongyang's picturesque Taedong River district, a massive beer hall called Kyongsong Beer Bar can serve thousands of customers per day, pouring multiple Taedonggang varieties on tap. And there is the famous Taedonggang No. 1 floating restaurant ship, a fancy boat restaurant moored on the river, which serves all varieties of Taedonggang beers. Many affluent families treat themselves to beer at least once a week. Taedonggang beer's popularity even pushed the envelope of North Korean conservatism. In 2009, the brewery did something unheard of. They produced a television commercial advertising the beer, extolling its soft, clean, and pleasant flavor, and bragging that it met ISO 9001 quality. This ad ran for several minutes on state TV, making it North Korea's first ever corporate commercial in a planned economy society. Just imagine an average North Korean guy seeing a jingle and beer graphics on TV for the first time. It's mind-blowing. The campaign was effective too, apparently boosting the beer's prestige. However, when our dear leader saw the ad, he was reportedly furious. He hated its overt capitalist marketing style, immediately yanked it off the air, and relentlessly fired the responsible officials. Still, it's mind-bending that North Korea was willing to bend its rules to promote this national treasure beer. Speaking of promotion, nothing beats a good old beer festival. Fast forward to August 2016. Under Kim Jong-un's watch, North Korea hosted its first ever beer festival, the Pyongyang Taedonggang Beer Festival. For about 20 days, the picturesque Taedong riverfront turned into a North Korean Oktoberfest. They set up tents and stalls opposite the illuminated Taedonggang restaurant ship, and for an entry fee of around $3, you would get 2 big mugs of beer. Each evening from 7 to 11 p.m., hundreds of people showed up, including foreign tourists, expats, and those well-to-do Pyongyang citizens. The scene was quite astonishing. Waitresses in crisp blue and white uniforms scurried around with jugs of beer, while on stage, troops of dancers and musicians, mostly very attractive young women performers, entertained the crowd. They even held beer tasting contests and prize raffles for fun. If you weren't told this was North Korea, you'd think you had teleported to a hedonistic festival in a capitalist country in the West. By all accounts, the local attendees dropped their usually reserved demeanor and partied with pints in hand, laughing and cheering. Tourists loved it too. One Western tour manager noted the universal power of a couple of cold beers on a warm evening to make people get along. This festival also turned into a PR win. Foreign visitors gave rave reviews. Some German attendants praised Taedonggang's clean and mellow taste, claiming in some ways it was better than Bavarian beer back home. A Japanese guest boldly declared it superior to Japan's Kirin beer and admitted he, not usually a beer drinker, downed 3 glasses in a row. With testimonials like these, the state media had a field day. The Korean Central News Agency proudly proclaimed that foreigners had confirmed Taedonggang as the best beer in the East, and they even started offering guided brewery tours for tourists after the festival's success. The festival organizer said at the opening ceremony that this event would improve the competitiveness of our world-famous Taedonggang beer. It was as much a marketing spectacle as a Juche rave party. Plans were made to hold the beer fest annually, but reality intervened. With our utmost sadness, in 2017, a poor harvest and economic hiccups led to the festival's cancellation. In subsequent years, international tourists vanished due to sanctions and then COVID-19, so the Grand Festival never quite repeated its 2016 glory. There were rumours of smaller-scale beer celebrations in summer 2022, possibly just low-key events in local beer halls. By 2023, North Korea tried to revive some of the spirit by organising regional beer events beyond Pyongyang. Like, the city of Nampo on the west coast held its first Taedonggang Beer Festival, with truckloads of draft beer kegs driven in from Pyongyang to let the provincial farm billies join the fun. Again, the beer was sold at a discount, and Nampo's pubs were jam-packed. Interestingly, a lot more women turned up to drink than usual, showing that beer culture is catching on with both genders. The local Nampo citizens were delighted, calling it a festival that truly let the working people celebrate their life, with cheap, high-quality beer at their doorstep. Even the state-run Taedonggang Brewery ended up competing with private beer halls in Nampo to sell more pints, with a little bit of capitalist competitiveness. Overall, Taedonggang beer's rise is a point of pride for North Korea. The brewery has been showered with awards and celebrated as an exemplary factory. Kim Jong-un, who spent some school years in Europe, seems keen on leveraging beer as a symbol of a civilized and modern North Korea. The Taedonggang Brewery even said to represent Asia at an international beer expo in 2019. Today, the Taedonggang No. 2 bottles are sold in China online, with a quite high price of $3 per bottle. Grand statements aside, it's fair to say North Korea has succeeded in brewing a genuinely decent beer against all odds, and they know it. Before we move on, I know you must wonder, how did those beers actually taste? Fear not, I'll be giving you my personal tasting notes and my very subjective ranking at the end. Taedonggang may be the poster child, but it's not the only beer of the Kimdom. There are classic names like Ponghak and Pyongyang beer, and there are fresher names like Samgak. Each brand is there with its own little tale. Let's briefly meet them. Pyongyang beer is the real OG. It's North Korea's oldest beer brand, dating back to the 1950s. Right after the Korean War, with help from socialist allies like East Germany and Hungary, North Korea set up a beer factory in its capital and named by its capital. Pyongyang beer was the staple brew for decades, but by all accounts, it was a pretty average light lager. It's brewed in the central district of Pyongyang and was considered a local pride product. You know, the kind of straightforward beer you'd serve at state banquets in the 70s and 80s. In modern times, Pyongyang beer has been overshadowed by Taedonggang's popularity, but it still exists and exports to foreign markets as a novelty product with a very straightforward name. Think of it like the dependable grandpa of North Korean beers. Spoiler alert, I don't like it. Then we have Ponghak beer, which was first brewed in the 1980s. This brand came out of another state brewery and was one of Kim Il-sung's efforts to diversify beer supply during better economic times. It's a pale lager with a decent reputation. Ponghak's claim to fame came in 2015 when Kim Jong-un himself weighed in on the Great Beer Debate. Allegedly, Kim Jong-un compared Ponghak beer to South Korean beer. He wanted to prove the point that North Korean malty beer was superior to those southern, watery beers. On one occasion, our supreme leader let officials taste Ponghak side by side with a South Korean beer, and then he confidently bragged that Ponghak was way better. Given South Korea's popular beers were notoriously bland before the craft revolution, he might have had a point. South Korean beer was once described as so watery it's a joke, even by South Koreans. In any case, Ponghak remains a sentimental favorite for some older North Koreans who remember it as the beer of the 80s, before Taedonggang stole the spotlight. Next, Kumgang beer. The brand literally means diamond, named after the famous Kumgang mountain. Launched in 1996, it was North Korea's first canned beer. Yeah, canned beer finally arrived in the 90s. The introduction of Kumgang beer in cans was a point of pride, showing North Korea's packaging technology improving. The canning was aimed at easier transport and possibly export. Nevertheless, it had never reached South Korea's soil. The beer is still produced to this day, but in small quantities. Now this one is interesting. Ryeongsong beer. It has a really cool name, which means something like Dragon Castle. The brand was originally introduced in the 1980s alongside Ponghak. It went somewhat quiet for a while, but has made a comeback in recent years, so much so that North Korean media started calling Ryeongsong the new beer on the block around 2018. It is a pale lager, and spoiler alert, I really like its new version. For microbreweries, there is Rakwon beer. Rakwon beer is basically the house brew of the Rakwon beer bar, which was one of the first microbreweries in Pyongyang, established in the early 2000s. It's popular on draft in the capital. Foreigners who visited Rakwon Bar often enjoyed it, and the venue itself is like a German-style beer hall. The beer is unfiltered and comes in light and dark varieties. It wasn't bottled commercially as far as I know, so I didn't get to taste it from a bottle, but folks say it's decent craft beer. And besides these regular options, makgeolli, the traditional rice wine, and corn beers exist in rural areas, but those are more like farmhouse homebrews. Outside the city, factory beer is scarce, and North Koreans get quite resourceful. Some defectors recall brewing beer from corn flour and wild hops, creating a strange, milky-looking fizzy drink. It's rough around the edges, but it was alcoholic, and that's what only mattered. So yes, North Korea's beer scene is more than just watery pale lager. In recent times, Taedonggang clearly dominates in quality and popularity, but the state has also expanded brewing capacity across the country. In 2014, they opened a new brewery in Haeju called Unjong Beer Factory, and in 2020, they completed a brewery in Rason. Both factories got relatively modern equipment, some imported from Europe. So by now, North Korea has 4 sizable and reliable breweries: Pyongyang Beer Factory, Taedonggang Beer Factory, Haeju Unjong Brewery, and Rason Brewery. This regional expansion is partly to reduce reliance on transporting beer long distances, and it ties into Kim Jong-un's plan for local economies, which means each province should have its own signature industries. So hey, why not a beer brewery?
여기 리문고리에 자리 잡은 화성 대동강 맥주집은 우리 이민들이 보다 문명한 생활을 누리게 하시려는 경의하는 청소동지 사랑 속에 세워졌습니다. 우리 화성 대동강 맥주집은 2층으로 되어 있는데 맥주 봉사홀과 여러 맥주 봉사실들 그리고 야외로 때로 되어 있어 여기를 찾는.
Lately, one name has been buzzing in the North Korean beer scene: Taedonggang beer, also known as Taedong River 11. This is a brand new beer launched in 2020 in the Rason Special Economic Zone, and it represents North Korea's most ambitious brewing project since Taedonggang. The Rason area is a semi-open trade zone, and by the late 2000s, it had a growing population of Chinese traders, Russian investors, and thirsty locals. The problem was that Taedonggang, the country's most prestigious brand, is hard to find in the remote northeast. Shipping beer from Pyongyang to Rason over terrible roads wasn't so practical, since the premium tastes only last a few days, and the draft beer certainly wouldn't survive the trip. Understandably, Rason needed its own brew. Our respected leader, Kim Jong-un, personally ordered the creation of Taedonggang beer. Yes, Taedonggang beer was a pet project of his, and even its name was given by His Majesty. Thus, in 2020, the Rason Brewery was established in Sombong's Pioneer Town district. It appears to be part of a foreign-invested project, likely with some Chinese partnership. In December 2020, the brewery began operations, and it launched its beer under the name Taedonggang 11. The 11 refers to its original gravity of 11 degrees Plato, basically indicating a standard lager strength around 4 to 5 degrees of alcohol. Locals simply call it Taedonggang beer. It quickly became popular in Rason, filling the void left by scarce Taedonggang. By 2022, word spread that Taedonggang beer was pretty decent, and all foreign visitors loved it. It was so decent that the North Korean leadership thought, why not export it for some foreign cash? In a surprising turn, Taedonggang beer is now being exported to Russia. A Vladivostok-based firm started importing Taedonggang beer into the Russian Far East. One expert even hailed Taedonggang as possibly the DPRK's best brew to entice Russian customers. The beer is being marketed in Russia under the translated name Taedong River 11, and it comes in two styles, a light lager and a dark stout, both in 500 milliliter bottles. The price on Russian shelves is around 160 rubles, about $2 per bottle, which actually raised some eyebrows because it's nearly double the cost of local Russian beers. The importer, Vostok Energia, has started distribution in Primorsky Krai, Yakutia, and Khabarovsk, with plans to expand all across Siberia. It's not just weapons, soldiers, and bigoted politicians crossing the border now. There are beer bottles too. Taedonggang's packaging has drawn some chuckles. Observers in China and Russia notice that Taedonggang bottles are often recycled from Chinese beers. Some bottles still bear the embossed Chinese characters for Tsingtao beer on the glass, and their caps or seals might be reused too. Clearly, Pyongyang's budget-friendly habit of reusing bottles lives on. It gives a whole new meaning to cross-border collaboration. Why waste good glass, right? The brewery allegedly uses modern equipment and a mix of local malt and imported Czech hops, so they're going for an international quality standard. It shows how much top-level support these ventures have. So, how are Russians receiving it? To be honest, it's a mixed bag. Some Russian consumers are curious to try North Korean beer for novelty's sake. The importer hyped Taedonggang's 11 degrees Plato recipe and pure all-malt ingredients as a selling point. But Russian beer experts have been generally unimpressed, saying, in capacity, quality, and variety, Russian beer is in no way inferior, and questioning why this foreign beer costs double the local price. Russian supermarkets already carry an enormous variety of beers, and local brews are very competitive. So, without any political motive, Taedonggang certainly faces a tough fight carving out market share in Russia's crowded capitalist market. Still, it's a new brand, and we are too early to conclude. Perhaps nostalgia or curiosity will drive sales. At least there's a sizable ethnic Korean community in the Russian Far East who might support it. Beyond Taedonggang, North Korea's craft beer scene is quietly blossoming too. The harsh reality of sanctions limiting fuel means distributing beer nationwide is tricky, which inadvertently led to a boom in local microbreweries. Why drive truckloads of beer across the country when you can just brew it on site? Hotels brew their own beer, restaurants brew their own, and even the bowling alley in Pyongyang brews its own beer. I even visited a North Korean state-owned pub in China, which sells Taedonggang on tap with their own brews. It's incredible. North Korea may have more microbreweries per capita than some beer-loving countries. The Koryo Hotel in Pyongyang has a famous microbrewery that serves what expats swear is the best dark beer in town. The Yanggakdo Hotel, famous for the Otto warm beer incident, has its own brew pub. In the northeast, the Chongjin Tourist Hotel built a microbrewery with Czech-made equipment to serve travelers and officials in that region. There is even a brewery in Pyeongseong that makes a special lager for elite party cadres, exclusive to high-ups. In terms of drinking culture, North Koreans enjoy beer in bars, but also often at home with meals. Typically, beer is served with dried fish snacks, dried squid, dried pollock, and anchovies. The older generation loves these salty, dried seafood bites with beer, while younger folks, influenced by foreign trends, have started pairing beer with fried chicken. And here's a kicker. North Koreans have discovered their own soju beer bombs. In the fake Korea, this is called somek, a soju shot dropped in beer. Well, North Koreans picked up on it and call it something like poktanju, literally bomb liquor. It became so popular in recent years that even the staid Korean Central Radio scolded listeners, saying that mixed drinking is bad for your health. It's actually quite heartwarming to see how beer and soju became a common language of fun on both sides of the 38th parallel. So, the beer scene in North Korea is a microcosm of the country itself. Resourceful, full of surprising contrasts, occasionally quirky, and evolving in spite of limitations. And now, having personally sampled a range of these brews, I'm ready to dish out my own verdict. Which North Korean beer reigns supreme on my taste buds? Which one flopped? Time for the ultimate ranking. So, instead of our regular final reflection, this is my personal North Korea beer tier list. For context, I tried a great variety of DPRK beers during my trip to China last November. I bought some smuggled beer in the border city of Dandong and tried some other varieties in North Korean state-owned beer houses and restaurants. Now, let's begin. First, the OG Pyongyang beer. They are pretty easy to find in China, especially in the border regions. Well, the bottle I tried had a distinctly grassy, boiled vegetable note, like overcooked corn or cabbage water, with a very light body. It was almost undrinkable. I don't know whether it's because of the extended shelf life or the long transport from Pyongyang, but it just tastes bad. Definitely in the F tier. No wonder North Korean state-run restaurants in China don't offer this option. Then, we have the signature Taedonggang No. 2. I do think it is a decent, above-average beer. To be honest, I am not a fan of the full malt formula. With 30% added rice, Taedonggang No. 2 balances its flavor very well. It's a bit bland, like many Asian brands, like Leo from Thailand and Sapporo from Japan. But overall, I will give it an A. Next, the Taedonggang Dark Beer No. 7. My verdict is average at best. The idea of a Juche stout sounds enticing, but less ideal. The chocolate and caramel malt flavors are present, but tend to be muted. The beer body is thin, with a short, finished taste. I would much prefer a regular Guinness rather than this. Drinkable, but not great. D tier. Ryongsong beer. Yeah, it's my favorite. The brand dates back to the 1980s, but it seems the factory upgraded its equipment in recent years. Old reviews are mostly negative, but I think the new version is excellently balanced, with a strong, malty flavor. It has a distinct smoothness and rich taste. And the price is higher than the rest, about $4 per bottle. Drinking it with a bowl of cold noodles. That's the taste of the Pyongyang upper echelon. Ryongsong beer is a clear S-tier beer worthy of top honors. Another export beer is Tumanggang Light Lager. Since it's produced in the border town of Rason, the beer is surprisingly fresh, combined with a peculiar taste of Juche ideology. It's not bad, but perhaps because of the recycled bottle, my bottle has a slight taste of chlorine. So, sorry, D tier. Finally, North Korea's utmost national treasure, one of our dear leader's masterful productions, the ultimate flagship beer, Taedonggang No. 1. First of all, it is much better than those South Korean watery beers. It's a solid beer, crisp, lightly hoppy, with a balanced profile. But again, it's produced in Pyongyang, so the poor storage and transport make it taste a little grassy. My judgment? A solid A. Alright buddies, it is the end of the show. Before you leave, please fill your glasses and let's say, gonbae. Maybe we will meet sometimes, ideally at a future Pyongyang International Beer Festival. Shouldn't we?